ACLU, Reproductive Rights Council, Alexa Colby Molinas, and local attorney Vanessa Williams. I saw it on Twitter. The ACLU has a Twitter, and basically this lawsuit is because they believe that we're denying women the right to an abortion. And so we'll just go into it because Vanessa, and good morning, Alexa. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Morning. Just to right off the bat, clear up the confusion, because I was kind of thinking that abortion is legal on Guam. And
it is legal on Guam.
It is legal on Guam.
So the lawsuit basically is challenging certain laws, right, that are in place on island, that it's making it difficult for women that want to have an abortion. They basically can't have an abortion on Guam. First of all, we don't have an abortion doctor. So I guess if you guys could, whoever wants to take it first, just kind of in a nutshell, tell us the
layperson's terms.
Yeah, the reasons behind the lawsuit.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. You know, this lawsuit it's challenging two outdated and medically unnecessary laws that are blocking access. So if not for these laws, people on Guam would have access to FDA-approved medications that can be used to end a pregnancy. But instead, because there is no access to these medications, because of these laws, people are being forced to travel several thousand miles and incur significant costs. And, you know, as we've been discussing in the midst of a pandemic, right, when we're all trying to minimize travel and in-person contact, people are being forced to go to Hawaii and even further just to be able to exercise their constitutional right and to get the care they need. And so that's what this lawsuit is about. It's about getting rid of medically outdated, unnecessary laws that are blocking access to healthcare.
Can you, I guess, Vanessa, tell us what those local laws are?
Yeah, there's two laws in particular that we're looking at, and one of them requires that all abortions be performed in clinic, and a medication abortion isn't technically performed, and it doesn't have to be in clinic. And the other one requires that the expansive list of information that Guam law requires be provided to a patient who's seeking this care be given to them in person, printed materials, and they have that 24 hours before they can go get the procedure, which again is supposed to be performed in clinic. So it's those two provisions that we're looking at that effectively ban these pre-viability early abortions via telemedicine.
When you talk about women having to travel thousands of miles to get an abortion, do we have any numbers on that or stats?
Well, there's no, because the abortions aren't happening in Guam, or at least, there's been nothing published since 2017 in terms of numbers of people in Guam getting abortions. And in Hawaii, there's no way of documenting who is getting abortions from Guam or who's a Hawaii resident. So, we know from the doctors who work there that they get phone calls all the time. Right, and they're hearing from patients who want access to care and want to come to care, but for many of them, the logistics and the financials are just too much. And for some of them who do ultimately make the trip, they actually have to delay for several weeks just to come up with the funds, right? And you're usually talking not just one airline ticket, right? Because someone's not going to travel alone to get healthcare. So they're likely going to go with a husband or a partner. So it's coming up with a significant amount of funds, in addition to the cost of the abortion itself, taking time off work, all of that. So we know that is happening. We know that some people aren't able to make it, and we know that some people are doing it, but it's incurring significant costs and having to overcome really significant barriers and obstacles to be able to do it.
So you don't have any stats?
No, there's no way of knowing.
How did this come on the radar of the ACLU? Was it a patient that came forward, or doctors that came forward to bring this to your attention that prompted this legal action?
Well, I think it actually came both from advocates on the ground in Guam who have been aware of the lack of access and who have been trying to do something about it for a long time. And then it also came from the doctors who are treating people from Guam in Hawaii and who knew that their patients were being, again, struggling with these barriers and forced to travel so far to get care. So it was really a combination, both of the people who are seeing the people who are struggling and also the advocates in Guam who have been aware of this issue and have been trying to find a resolution for quite some time.
Vanessa, have you been contacted locally by anyone?
Yeah, I mean, there's they either directly or indirectly where someone reaches out to another person who I'm familiar with and asks, do you know where you can get this care, or how can I do this on island? And there are no doctors we know who are performing this on island, and we know that there are no doctors who will provide the medication off island who are still licensed in Guam, but they can't provide it via telemedicine. So yes, I've had to unfortunately report that to people who inquire.
And who is Dr. Shandini Radu?
So Dr. Shandini Raidu and Bliss Kaneshiro are the doctors. They're Guam licensed physicians and they're also licensed in Hawaii. And they're the doctors who are seeing people in Hawaii who are traveling from Guam and who are fielding these phone calls from people who are seeking care. And they are also, in Hawaii, these doctors are able to use telemedicine to provide and prescribe medications to people who live on Hawaiian islands like Guam, where local access is either limited or just completely unavailable. So they are able to serve patients in Hawaii who need access to care, and they're able to help them without those people having to get on a plane and fly hundreds of miles to go see a doctor in person in the midst of a pandemic. But they can't extend that service to their patients in Guam, again, because of the laws that Vanessa described. And so that's what this lawsuit is about. It's really about ensuring equal access to care, and that laws are not forcing people in Guam to be subjected to different standards and different services than other people.
Are those FDA approved medications available on Guam?
So there are two medications that are used for medication abortion, and the first one, because of certain FDA rules, you have to be an authorized prescriber to prescribe it, which the doctors in Hawaii are. And there's, as far as we know, no authorized prescribers of that medication in Guam. Again, that's part of the lack of access.
So this is the abortion pill, right? What up to what point in a pregnancy can it be prescribed to abort the baby?
It's for early pregnancy, so it's about up to 10 or 11 weeks. It essentially causes an early miscarriage.
Vanessa, do you know if this lawsuit is something that Governor Liu supports?
Well, I would hope so. I mean, I can't speak for the governor, obviously, but she was when she was the head of the Nurses Association, and there was an absolute ban on abortion that was introduced by then Senator Ariola. She, testified against that in the lawsuit challenging that ban. And I believe, she has made clear her policy on supporting women's access or ability to exercise their constitutional right to abortion, both before elected and while she's been in office. So I would hope so.
Just going over some of the stats here, and that is interesting, Alexa, that we don't have any numbers beyond 2017, but just the numbers that I was able to find online. 2015, 263 abortions performed. 2016, 289. 2017, 239. But I wanted to go back, Vanessa. I remember I did a story with Jane Flores, and she was trying to recruit an abortion doctor to come out to Guam to do abortions, but I don't think it obviously never panned out. So when we talk about access, right? Currently, there's no one who performs abortions on Guam. Why do you think that is?
Well, actually, I've talked to a few doctors, and some things that I've heard are that they just it's not worth providing this service, um, given the volume of care that they have to provide for their other patients anyway. And then I mean, they don't say exactly what these costs are, but it's not worth it. I get the sense that the requirements are burdensome as well. The reporting requirements, this was communicated to me, the space requirements for it having to be in their clinic. These were just some of the reasons provided to me, but I'm sure they vary just as, the decisions for anyone vary.
Just to play devil's advocate here, if we don't have a doctor on Guam doing abortions because, in your words, it's not worth it, how great is the need for abortions? Because I'm just thinking, I mean, the way you guys make it sound, it's like there's hundreds of women out there who want to get an abortion but just can't, and they got to go fly to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we know, you just said yourself the numbers of abortions that were happening previous to the doctor leaving. So I would say if those average over 10 years are 200, then we'd say the need has to be at least 200. I don't think women just stopped electing to have them or chose to, right? There was no choice. And I think that when you're talking about, oh, it's just a few people who, or maybe 200 who would have to bear that cost, you think about the women who are usually facing, that typically are seeking abortion, even on Guam, and their demographic and their, what income bracket they're in, and their ability to get that going off island isn't actually possible for them. So it's not like they're just being inconvenienced. This has become impossible, and it's become a ban on their, constitutional right to seek this care. I would say that if there's even one person who's being denied their constitutional right, there's a compelling need for providing and restoring access to Guam.
Mm-hmm. I know that the lawsuit has been filed already, but has there been any effort, or will you be part of any effort to try and get the law repealed or changed?
I mean, those are certainly options for the legislature if they want to take that up. I think as we said, the first law that Vanessa explained, the law that requires abortions to be performed in a clinic, that law was actually passed in 1978, and it hasn't been updated since then. Right. And when it was passed, it made sense because the only kinds of abortions there were procedures that were performed in a doctor's office or in a clinic or in a hospital. But today, since for over 2 decades now, actually, we've had FDA approved medications. And so the laws simply aren't up to date with what medical evidence shows us. So that is certainly an option. If the legislature were to adjust the laws, then that would certainly be a solution here.
Mm-hmm.
What's the
But Vanessa, have you heard any effort underway for anybody to petition the legislature to update the laws?
No, I haven't, but I can tell you in this last election, I had the opportunity to ask candidates this question: if they would be, if elected, would they help amend or revise laws that are unmedically necessarily and restricting access to abortion? And I can tell you that I don't think there was one elected senator who opted to answer the question or said they would do so.
Wow.
Would all this be solved if we just had someone on Guam who was giving out or performing the abortions?
I mean, that would certainly, obviously, it would be very important and helpful for people to have access if there was a doctor who was able to meet on Guam, who was able to meet the need. I mean, it doesn't change the fact that the laws are medically out of date and unnecessary, and that people should be able to have access to telemedicine. And I do think, especially during a pandemic where we've seen telemedicine across medical disciplines, right, increase and expand. And a lot of people are saying, telemedicine is here to stay, because even if you have access somewhere on the island, if you live in a rural area, if you have mobility problems, for a lot of people, it's just safest and most private to be able to access their care at home. So I think even if there were doctors on the island who were providing abortions, this is still a very important service. It's something that's been used across the United States and abroad in terms of prescribing medication abortion. So again, there's certainly no need to deprive people in Guam from access to sort of medically proven care.
It's kind of a tricky argument because we just don't have a doctor, but there's access. There's no doctor, so it's kind of like a cart horse. I think, but I wanted to ask, just given the climate here, I'm pretty sure you did your research. Guam's like, 99% Roman Catholic. This abortion issue, it's hot. I mean, basically, when Jane Flores came out and said, I want to go hire an abortion doctor, I mean, when we kept asking the governor about it, she got tired of having to respond. And so it kind of was beat back down into submission. And here we go again.
Right. And I think for Vanessa, you live here, you're on the ground here, and maybe even it's too early to ask, but since this went in the media that the ACLU filed this lawsuit, Vanessa, your co-counsel, have you received any phone calls or anything like that? That like, what are you doing?
No, I haven't. Not yet. It's too early. I have received a lot of phone calls and messages asking, how can we help? Thank you for bringing up this issue. So that is actually very encouraging.
The truth is that people of all faiths and backgrounds have abortions. And actually, evidence shows that most of the people who have abortions identify as people of faith, and most of those people actually do identify as Catholic. And I think it's just because decisions about whether and when and how to become a parent are just such important decisions that people make, and they're just so deeply personal. And each person makes them according to their conscience and their beliefs.
So what's
next? Yeah.
Yeah. Are we going to see some like courtroom arguments, constitutional level stuff? And who's going to represent Guam?
Vanessa, I thought.
Well, I would think it'd be the Attorney General.
Right.
And the three defendants are the Attorney General, the Office of the Attorney General, the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, and the Healing Arts Commission. And I believe that with respect to the Board and Commission, they are already represented by a delegate of the Attorney General's office.
Mm-hmm. So what's next? Do the defendants have to file like a response brief? What's the next step in this?
So, I mean, as you know, the case just started, and we will be filing a request for a preliminary injunction. So we'll be asking the court for an order to block the laws, and that will, once we file that, then the government will respond, and I would imagine there will be argument. But those are a few steps down the line.
Yeah.
Was the lawsuit filed? I guess timely filed because of the Roe v. Wade anniversary?
It's just coincidence. It's just coincidence.
There is no coincidence.
The timing wasn't chosen. It wasn't chosen for that reason.
Okay.
I mean, Vanessa, just being familiar and having interviewed Attorney General Levin Camacho, numerous times, do you think that this is something he's going to argue, or just something that they're going to want to resolve quickly? Because I'm kind of guessing his maybe personal views on the issue.
I don't know. I don't know, but I think that regardless of their personal views, I think that the Attorney General is their charge is to uphold and defend the laws of Guam and the laws of the Constitution. And so I would hope that they would interpret that this would be unconstitutionally applied to these medication abortions.
So we might not even have like a trial per se.
That's possible.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
No
Thank-
further questions, Your Honor.
Was
Thank
there
you
any?
so much.
Is there any final comments on your end?
No, thank you for having us and allowing us to talk about this.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time. See you,
Bye.
ladies.
Have a good day.
Okay.
Take care.
8:22. There you go. We're gonna get Polly Mike on this as it's not a